Will Wheeler, welcome to Real Insight. It's a bit of a whirlwind romance between us because I think we only met formally at the start of this week. I saw that you were heading to Melbourne.
Yeah. I think I probably obviously connected with you a while back.
A while back, yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of, say, social media these days. You can be connected with people, but you may not talk to people, but you feel like you sort of know people
Definitely.
without even talking to them, if that makes sense. So
Definitely.
no, thank you for the invite. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. So for the folks that are listening, why are you here? What is it? What's bringing you to Melbourne? And give us the background on all that.
Yeah. So obviously I got a pretty big background in neurodiversity. So what we're trying to work towards, especially with my company, Neurodiveristy Academy, is really disrupting how people choose where they study. So a big thing that we really want to do is help people know where to study, what supports they're going to get, all that. So we're pretty much building a tech platform type of thing. But the reason why I'm here is out of the blue. I had one of the organizers from the EduTech conference happening here in Melbourne on the 12th and 13th, the 13th and 14th, I think it is.
Yeah.
And they asked me to speak about neurodiversity and vocational education. So when they sort of reached out, I love the conference. It's huge.
It's a massive conference.
Yeah. And I was like, man, okay, I've definitely got to come down for that. My business partner's down here. Other people I know are down here. So I was like, all right, let's go down and have a little bit of fun and do some stuff while I'm down here. So that pretty much is the reason why I'm down here.
Yeah, so do a Sunday podcast. It's good.
Totally.
Unfortunately, this is going to air after the EduTech conference. So not that we can promote people to go, but if you are in Melbourne and you're in education, you're probably going to be there anyway. So look out for Will. Will, you are also affected by neurodivergence. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I'm ADHD and dyslexic. And I think, like we were talking about before, it's just become a part of, well, it's always been a part of our lives. So it's just, I suppose, finding out about it. So yeah, that's pretty much my life.
How long ago did you get your formal diagnosis?
So with dyslexia, I was about 10, I think.
Wow.
So a long time ago. And for a long time, I just thought I was dyslexic. I think the biggest thing for me, especially with my ADHD diagnosis, was that once I started to get into the neurodiversity space, I was around a lot of, key doctors and that in this field. And it just so happened I released a book in, 2019 or 2020, I think it was. And I gave a copy to a friend of mine who's a doctor in the neurodiversity field. And she's like reading it and she's like, hey, Will, I think you might be ADHD.
Wow.
Yeah. And she goes, why don't you come into my office? We'll do some tests, all of that. And then came back. So I think that was in 2021, I got diagnosed with ADHD. And it was sort of like the penny dropped and it's like, okay, so that's why certain things, it's more than just a dyslexia type of thing. Because there was some things with dyslexia and I'm like, but I feel like there's more. So yeah, so I haven't been diagnosed with ADHD for that long now.
Yep. It seems weird to me, well, not weird, but it seems more common. So the more people that I speak to in the neurodivergent world, particularly the folks that I get on the show, I always find that there's a big percentage of people who discover ADHD as their comorbidity, right? It's normally something else that came up first. And I find it's either autism that comes up first and then later some ADHD, some bipolar that leads into that, or some dyslexia that leads into that. And is that really, I think if I go back to when I was at school, I read well and I did maths pretty well. So dyslexia wasn't something that held me back, but it's a symptom within my ADHD. It just wasn't powerful enough to stand out. The way you're talking about trying to get neurodivergent people to pick better education paths, what are some of the things that you're doing to advise or steer people in their selection? Like, what are the criteria for good selection to study as folks like us?
I think so. If we look at it from a business perspective of an education provider, and I'll probably take a lot of my own experience from this. And, my background is actually in training and education. And once I got into that, it really gave me a real great perspective of the lack of understanding of neurodiversity in that space. Now, at the end of the day, if we look at it from a business perspective, if you come to me and let's say I own a training organization, or I'm a university or college, whatever that might be, and you say to me, hey, look, I'm dyslexic, I'm ADHD, are you going to support me? Are there supports in place? I'm not going to say no. I'm going to say, yeah, totally.
Because you want students.
Yeah, at the end of the day, your money, you're a bum on my seat, you're going to make me money. So I'm going to say whatever to get you across the line there, right? Now, the problem is, and I've had this happen to myself, I've spoken to other people, it's definitely happening. We may then go into study whatever it is we're studying. And then what happens is we get there and we find that there's no support for us. No one has an idea of what we're struggling with. The teacher may not even know. And then our experience can be really painful for us, can be very stressful. There's no understanding. We're feeling alone because no one knows how to support us. And then we may quit, which we may get some form of a HECS debt, or we may have paid for some study which we can't get refunds on, and we're stuck with this huge bill that we're never going to get. Also, too, if we look at it from a business perspective of a college or university, if this student isn't having a great experience, they're not getting through their stuff, that college is not going to get paid for that student going through because maybe they've quit. And that's money being lost at the end of the day. There are stats, stating that there's less people with, say, a disability signing up to do study, but there's higher rate of people with disability actually dropping out of higher education. So obviously there's a problem there. So getting back to your original question, we sort of want to go, okay, we want to find the providers that actually are doing good things, not who say they are. They actually are doing good things. And we want to endorse them or give them an accreditation to go so people can be like, oh my God, if these guys are accrediting this organization, that must mean that these guys are going to be good. I'm going to go study there. Now, for the organization, that's going to mean more money for them. From a business perspective, you do need to look at that because what I've learned, especially, people want to do good and help neurodiversity, but at the end of the day, what's in it for them at the end of the day? So we need to look at it from a business perspective as well. And what's going to be in it for these organizations? If they can get their stuff right, they've got the right supports, they've got the proper understanding of neurodiversity, they are going to retain those students. Those students are going to finish. They're going to then get the payments from because usually how it works is you get like a start payment, a midterm payment, and then an end payment, or sometimes it's like unit by unit, or however you look at it. That's how you get paid. So the more these students can be getting through and actually finishing it and having a great experience, the more these organizations are going to make money. The student's going to have a better experience. They're going to build more confidence, and maybe they might go back to do more education. Do you see how
Definitely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
There's so many positives to it, which it's not being looked upon. So we want to really help with that, if that makes sense, because what that could potentially do is, and a big thing we want to do is while those people are studying, and I'm not, we were talking about ADHD coaching and all that before, right? We want to actually, and that costs money. What we want to do. So if we're looking at it from a business perspective, we want to refer students to certain schools. Now, a lot of those higher education providers, they pay big commission for students. If I go out and find a student, they'll pay me a commission. Now, the thing is, we want to utilize that money and commission and use that to put back into the student and give them like, coaching and courses like maybe how to develop as a neurodivergent, how to utilize LinkedIn, how to use certain assistive technology. So once they've finished studying and they're ready for the workforce, and let's say they get a job and someone goes, oh, so you're dyslexic or ADHD, what type of supports do you need? Instead of them going, well, oh, gee, I don't know, while they're studying with us, we're going to give them a better understanding of who they are through like a lot of these coaching and that, which we will charge nothing to the neurodivergent person. It'll be free. They'll then be able to go into a job and go, well, actually, I need this, 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 and this.
Yep.
And hopefully that can help them to develop quicker into their job, maybe do more study, or even be able to grow and develop in their careers and influence other people as well.
Yeah, 100%. What are some of those things? And this is, I'd like to spend some time on this if we can, because I'm a leader in a technology business. And as we spoke about off camera, I've got a pretty big focus in trying to make sure that the workplace is accommodating for folks like us. I've worked at places when I didn't have a diagnosis. Clearly, I was still affected and it wasn't very supportive of ADHD. And I could see where my career did really well and where it didn't. What are some of the things, the common sense things that all employers can be doing to make their places more encompassing for folks like us?
Yeah, it's definitely a good question because, I do consulting within workplaces as well. And I think the biggest thing, and which I see, what I see the problem is sometimes as well, and I see some people, some workplaces going, okay, we want to support neurodiversity. So let's start hiring some neurodivergent people. But if that environment isn't right for that person's going to fail miserably.
Yeah.
And then what's going to happen is that person, or what's going to happen is people are going to go, oh, look, we hired some neurodivergent people. We tried to give it a go, but nothing worked. So we're back at square one. So, and something I'm going to be talking about at the EduTech conference, especially in education, and this can go into the workplace as well, is something that I call the neurodiversity chain of responsibility. Now, the chain of responsibility, I first picked that up around, I used to do like warehouse training and stuff like that. And the chain of responsibility was actually implemented within the trucking industry. So back in the day, truck drivers were under the pressure. So say, for example, a truck driver had a load that was overweight. It was the responsibility of the driver then, if they went out on the road, if they had an accident, it was their fault.
Right.
Even if they had a boss who said, nah, get it out or you don't have a job, it was then the driver. They then were finding there was too many accidents, all that. So what they did, they brought in what they called a chain of responsibility, that everyone in that chain plays a role in doing the right thing.
Yep.
Now, this is where I'm sort of like, I sort of adopted a similar type of thing to go, okay, well, if we don't have support from the top leadership there, how is the next part of the chain going to work? The next part to help that person. Yeah. Everyone needs to be a part of that chain. So there needs to be understanding from the top and bring that down type of thing. So I definitely believe leadership is definitely key there, because if you don't have leaders on board, they're just going to look past it.
Yep.
And it's not going to really work.
The other thing I find too, that I've seen, and this is a result of a lot of the DEI stuff that kicks around at the moment is very good, and I don't want to be taken the wrong way, but it's driven a lot by the implementation of policy without an understanding. And that's the other thing that I see is a lot of businesses, they go and see a consultant and they put together a policy, and here's a policy and that's all good. And now we've got the policy, and the policy goes in the top drawer and the neurodivergents go out in the field and never the twain shall meet. So obviously not the best approach. But dealing with consultancy, so someone like yourself, how do we go about as a business identifying internally where we need to improve? Is there things that a business can do before they see someone like yourself to try and discover what you can do to be a little bit more supportive.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I often think about it because I think a big thing, especially getting a consultant in, it's a lot of money. And I think a lot of people sort of look at the money factor and go, look, we just can't afford to get a consultant in, or we can't afford to do this, we can't afford to, and it comes down to money at the end of the day, right? But you know what? There's so many simple, free things that an organization can start doing to start implementing change or starting to identify certain things that are going on. Because, often I've heard people, so for example, we're talking about something about, oh, we could get some dyslexic people, and the person was like, oh, we can't have dyslexic people here. And I'm thinking, well, you've probably already got a whole bunch of dyslexic people there, So then obviously not having a good understanding of their demographic in their offices or whatever that looks in the company or whatever that looks like. But you know what, just implementing things like, starting, not a group, but like, I'm just trying to think of the word, but starting little things where you've got like a neurodiversity committee, which doesn't even have to be led by neurodivergent people, because you don't really want to go, hey, look, I think you're neurodivergent. Do you want to and you're like, what the hell, you rude
diagnosing everyone in the business.
Yeah, exactly right. So even like if you want to start with that, it's so important to if say you're neurotypical, but you're passionate about and you want to create that change, start it yourself. And then, advertise that within the organization and see who comes to that. Listen, get feedback and create change from it. You don't have to, that costs you nothing.
Yeah.
And it's little things like that that make a huge difference. So, you don't need to be spending all this money straight off the bat type of thing. Yeah, look, don't get me wrong. There is some really key things you could be spending money on. And look, don't get me wrong. If you want to come to me and
you got a pile of cash to throw around.
Yeah, totally.
The links are in the comments, folks.
Yeah. I'm not going to say no, right? But, I don't want to just get people to pay me when they could be doing other things for really nothing, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's a little bit of what you could start doing to make some great impact.
Yep. Are there any common sense moves to make? I mean, like one of the things that I've found after my diagnosis that now is a very important tool for me, particularly working in an open plan office, is my AirPods. My ability to be able to press those things and put them into noise cancel mode. Because for me, working in an open plan office, if there's 25 conversations going on, I'm listening to them all, and
totally
watching for keywords out of all of them. So that was always a problem for me. And then I would find myself getting to a point of fatigue, leaving my desk, going to try and recharge, come back in, can't settle into focus. Now just having something as simple as some noise cancelling earphones as part of, being an employer here, I can turn them on and get on with things. Is that the sort of stuff we want to be trying to support people with?
Yeah. And I think the thing is, it really depends on the person. I think sometimes I hear people in meetings and it's like, oh, if you work here, we can give you some noise cancelling headphones. Maybe that works for some people. See, for me, it's not, say, if I put on noise cancelling headphones that will work for me. I may get distracted because I see someone walk past that door there. I see something going on over here. So, and I'll give you a really good example. So I've been working with a gentleman just recently, and this dude's got like a PhD in like, what is it? Philosophy.
Yep.
Switched on dude. He's autistic, ADHD. Now the guy, he's got certain KPIs to meet. He's doubling his KPIs every day, right? And he will get that done before 12 o'clock, right? Now, when he's in the office, he's really struggling with that because he doesn't take breaks. He'll be like hyper-focused, and he's so particular. It's all correct, right? Now, the thing is, he's doing double the amount of work as everyone else, but then he's finished at 12 and then he's sitting there all the way till 3 o'clock.
Mm.
And it's like his mind is just going so crazy. And there's a really high risk of burnout there because he's pushing himself so hard there. So when he's in the office, it can be quite a bad thing for him. But
Yeah.
when he works from home, which is 3 days a week, he, he might have a video playing where he can do a little bit of work, watch a little bit of the video, then go back to work.
Yeah.
And it sort of plans it out. So, that works well for him. And it's sort of like when he's in the office, he has to have noise canceling earphones at lunchtime. He needs to just sit by himself. So people might think, oh, this guy's rude because he always sits by himself, but he needs that.
Got to recharge.
Yeah, totally. So it really just depends on the person. But I think having that understanding of that is probably more important than just giving the headphones themselves.
Yeah, particularly the flexibility in the work too. That's something that this business has been very gracious to me towards is the flexibility that I need in my work. And I never knew that I needed that. We were talking off camera before about how easily a well-planned day on behalf of an ADHD person can actually go pairs. And it can be something as simple as you've planned to go to work and now you're stuck in traffic. And I just didn't prepare for the traffic. And so now the traffic has my anxiety at an 11. All the great things that I've had planned to do in the next 3 hours just can't happen now. The best thing for me to do is to turn around, go home. By going to the office, I'm only going to create more hectic. So what I've found for me is similar to the point that you said before, being able to work at the hours that suit me, because I might wake up at 4 a.m. and I'm in a state of hyperfocus. I've got to do it. I'll work until 8 and then I might go back to bed and nap for 2 hours and then get back on. Because we don't have the ability to plan when our brains want to play ball, right? That's
totally
the hardest thing.
Agree.
Yeah. What do you do to manage yourself? What do you do as some of your personal things that you've learned?
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting one because, obviously being an entrepreneur, having to juggle, and, we're, especially with my company, we're not at the level we need to be. We're definitely getting there. So, you do have to juggle things. You need to see when you can fit in meetings on top of the other stuff you're doing. So, and you know what? A really interesting thing that I've noticed is going into the office is very difficult for me. I get so distracted. I love talking to people. Everyone wants to talk to me.
Yep.
My computer setup isn't the same as what it is at home. So when I'm at home,
It's just me, man.
yeah, totally. When I'm at home, I try to smash out as much as I can when I'm at home. And when I have to go into the office, it's more of a relaxing type of thing where I'm showing my face and doing the social thing and talking to people and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, I can get some things done, but I try to really accommodate as much as possible when I'm at home there. Sometimes, you know what, and I think, and it was actually interesting, I was speaking to my business partner before I got here, and we're talking about how we want to structure our company once we get to that level where we're able to have staff and all of that. And we're like, we really want to create the type of workplace that if you've got work that needs to be done and it's done, go. There shouldn't be okay, you need to sit,
sit at your desk for the next 3 hours.
This is what I was talking about that guy. He's getting his stuff done by lunch, but then he has to sit there till 3. And it's sort of like, well, you've done double the amount of what you need to do.
Yeah.
Why stay longer? So we really want to try to develop that type of workplace where it's like work when your brain's working. And if you've done everything you need to do, go to the shops or go and have lunch with your friend or whatever like that, because I think it just builds that environment where one, you're enjoying it because you're able to work at the time. You're not waking up going, oh man, work.
Yeah.
You know, it could be like, well, man, I'm already done with everything. So I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go on a holiday or whatever, you know.
I think about that analogy and compare that to, again, we had a really long chat before we jumped on the camera today, folks. But yeah, we were chatting earlier, like that would have been great for me at school because every school report that I ever got was easily distracted, distracts others, you know, gets his work done, but then is an uproar. I'm like, correct. Like I would finish the work in 15 minutes and then be forced to sit there for the other 30, like going out of my mind. Of course, I'm going to talk to other people. Of course, I'm going to distract people because I'm done.
Yeah.
There's nothing else for me to do here. Let me leave. But no, you have to sit there and be a, you know, well-behaved student. Oh, okay. Why can't I?
Yeah. And I think as well, what that can do is actually make our minds go, and I don't know if this is the right word, more insane.
Definitely.
Just sitting there.
Yeah.
You know,
because you're stuck in your own head. Our heads aren't quiet places to reside in. Like you can't sit there peacefully.
Yeah, totally. And I think that sometimes makes it even worse. But you know, I just don't get like with how it feels like how workplaces are still structured like the old school way, like 9 to 5 or whatever. It feels like a slavery. It's almost like slavery, you know. It's like you need to be here and when you're like, say for example, when I was working in warehousing when I was a lot younger, right? You got all your work done, and then you'd have to be on the broom sweeping.
Yep.
And it's like, well, if you're done and you've got all this, why not why not utilize that time to celebrate the hard work the team's doing? Or why don't we use that time to do some training?
Yep.
You know, not slave away.
Yeah. Because you're also made to feel bad by doing nothing.
Yeah.
Even though the person that you're compared to takes 8 hours to do the same thing it takes you to do 2 in, you're the person who's seen as wasting 6 hours worth of time.
Yeah, totally.
Like, it's just bizarre.
Totally get it.
Yeah.
Totally get it.
So I suppose in keeping on the theme, I don't want to go too far off track because I know I will. If we talk about building an environment for people that are affected by neurodivergence, one of the things that is very difficult for me is rejection sensitivity. It's one of those things where I think in my life there probably would have been a bunch of other stuff that I would have been really good at or had achieved a lot more in if I didn't suffer from that sort of stuff, particularly in the workplace. Someone who is neurodivergent like us, and they're at that point in their career where it's like they just need that little bit of platform or that little bit of, you know, someone to reach out and give them a hand so that they take that next step. Do you have ways and means that you've grown to try and show people that sort of support? Where I don't want this conversation to go, and I always frame this, we're not psychologists and we're not here to try and talk about psychology, but as people with lived experience, are there little things that you're becoming more familiar with doing for others in a similar position to us?
I've just got to think back. I think if I look at it right, and actually this, I'll give you an example, right? So it was funny, I was only talking about this on my podcast a few months ago, right? When I first wanted to get into my business or get into business, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to start a business. And I actually was like, because, you know, before the pandemic, you know, networking was done differently.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't this Zoom, jumping on a Zoom and doing that. It all was done in person. So say if you said, Will, I want to meet you, I wouldn't go, let's jump on a Zoom. That just, sometimes it just wasn't a thing. It'd be more like, let's catch up for a coffee.
Yep.
Now, if you ask me, let's catch up for a coffee, I'd be like, what's wrong with this person?
Why?
Can't they jump onto a Zoom?
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm originally from Brisbane. And I made the move down to Sydney so I could build my networks more. Obviously, Sydney is, it's a business capital there, right? There's a lot of
What
stuff.
happening? Yeah.
Yeah, a lot going on. So I was like, okay, I want to move down there, build the connections there type of thing. And I remember I used to go to a lot of networking events, especially in the D&I scene. Obviously, it's DE and I now,
Yep.
but it was D&I back then. And back in those days, and this is probably going back about 8-9 years ago, neurodiversity just wasn't a thing.
No.
It just wasn't a thing. And I remember I'd be going in there very so vulnerable and just putting it on the table. I'm dyslexic, neurodiversity is going to be in there, because people would talk about how much great stuff their organization does. And I'm like, what's going to be the next biggest thing in D&I? I said, it's neurodiversity. And people just look at me like, man, what the hell,
What are you talking
man?
about? Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm dyslexic, I'm ADHD. And I remember I'd go to those events because the way I look at neurodiversity, I'm like, yeah, man, we can do all this great stuff. And I'm so passionate about it. To me, it's the best thing ever, right?
Yep.
And so you're going into these events thinking, yeah, man, people are going to think the exact same. And they're going to go, yeah, that guy's onto it. Let's get him in and do business with him. And it doesn't work like that at all. It doesn't work like that at all. So I would go to these events, put myself out there, and man, every time the door would be getting slammed in my face, or I'd be looked at weird and all of that type of stuff. And I remember catching the train home, just gutted, thinking in my head, going, because RSD was real, right?
Yeah, man.
And I was just like sitting on the train thinking, are you doing the right thing? Is this really worth it? Because I'm thinking, oh man, am I wasting my time? Do I really want to? And I did want to create change, but to be able to do this better, I need to build a business around. I can't do it for free. So the whole building the business side of things was a real thing, but when you're getting a door slammed in your face time after time after time again, it's hard.
Yeah.
We're talking about this stuff, right? And it was incredibly difficult. The funniest thing about it is that all these years later, a lot of people now ring me out of the blue who I met back in those days, and they're like, "Hey, Will, we want to talk to you about neurodiversity. You were right."
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God.
There we go.
It's paying off. It's paying off.
Yeah.
But what I'm sort of getting at is that back in those days, I remember I felt like I was just getting knocked down. And that's hard to take, right? But the thing that kept me going was people used to reach out to me via social media and all that and be like, oh, Will, seeing what you're doing has helped me to be able to get a job. Will, what you're doing is so awesome. It's really helped me inspire my son or daughter to do this stuff, right? And then what I learned was that what I'm actually working towards isn't actually about me at all. It's about the people I'm trying to help. And that was what really that's what motivates me more.
Yep.
Yeah, I get knocked down. And even now I'm like, oh man, this is difficult. But it's those people that help me,
Yep.
And I've learned that I'm not necessarily in the business of neurodiversity or neurodiversity in education. I'm actually in the business of changing lives. And that's bigger than anything else.
For sure.
You know what I mean? So that's what helps me to keep going.
Yeah, because and I always think my life is a number two. I've never been a number one. And I've flirted with the idea sometimes of starting my own business and things like that. But I know very well that I would struggle with that because it's all up to me. And if I don't have a body double or someone to rock with, it would be a very hard time. So I've never done it, but I think I've been a pretty successful number two. Do you have a hard time running your own business?
It's actually interesting you said on your own. And to start with, I was on my own a lot of the time. And the hardest part, especially about business, if you're building it or you want business partners, it's so incredibly hard to find the right people to build that with. And
It'd be like starting a band.
Yeah. It's totally like that. It's because it's funny that I was in bands back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And after the first band broke up, it was so incredibly hard to find other people to gel with, you know? So a long period of, you know, my business life has been trying to find the right people for that. I learned, you know, and you just can't do it on your own.
No.
It's incredibly difficult. Don't get me wrong, I get a lot of people reach out to me and want to do business. Pardon me, so, but like, the team, it's ever since we've started, like my business partner dropped me off just before, having him on board, being able to talk. We've got, you know, my marketing guy or our marketing guy, I should say, and we just gel, and it makes it so much easier. Having a team is so much better than trying to do things on your own. Like I said, the hardest part is finding that team. Don't get me wrong. I've been with some people who just didn't gel, and nice people at the end of the day, but just their style and that just didn't work in. And I think what we're working towards now is the right people. It took a hell of a long time to get there.
Yep.
But that's what I found helped us.
Do you still have days where you just CBF, where I'm not doing anything, and yep, there's a business in front of me, but today's not the day for business? Do you do that, or have you got that under control?
It's interesting. It's definitely on my mind every day. I think what I've learned to do is to sometimes step back from certain things, because if you're too focused on it all the time, there's a very high risk of burnout.
Yeah.
So, you know, and then let's take the weekend, for example, right?
We're both here working.
Well, yeah. Well, yes, true. And you know what's weird, right, as well? Like, and I was saying this to my wife earlier, is that I'm coming down to Melbourne, and I was originally going to be here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But then I had so many people go, man, we need to catch up. We need to do a podcast. And I'm like, well, because I have another podcast to actually do on top of this one, right?
Go.
Not today, but I've actually got to catch up with someone this afternoon.
Yeah.
But you know, just so much stuff going on.
Yeah.
But for me, I quite enjoy these things, you know, having this chat now. It's fun.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think too, what I've learned is that sometimes I feel like I'm lazy, because
I feel like I'm lazy every day,
man. Yeah, because I might sit down and watch the football or whatever that is, or the Olympics or whatever it is, right? And but a lot of the time, what I'll be doing when I'm watching that, I'll be doing stuff on my phone, like at the same time. So yes, it can be difficult at times, but I seem to balance it a lot better now. And my wife works nights, so I try to keep myself busy, if that makes sense.
It's good that you can keep that thing in check, man, because, you know, that's the other thing, I guess, with ADHD people in entrepreneurship, is our natural ability to want to hyper-focus something could also be the downfall, because you're hyper-focused on your business.
Well, I'll give you an example. So my first business that I was trying to get off the ground was going to be a tour company that took people to music festivals all around the world, right? And it was really funny because I used to have big drug and alcohol problems, right?
Yep.
And when I started that business, I was probably still very involved in that scene.
So it was a means to an end?
Well, it's sort of funny because what I was sort of like, I was like, okay, I want to start this business, but I've got to be focused. I can't be drunken on drugs.
Of course.
But when you're going to music festivals and that sort of plays a big role in it. And I sort of realized that once I got off the drugs so I could focus on the business, this business no longer fitted who I was as a person, right?
Yep.
But, you know, for a long time, I remember I would wake up at like 7:30 in the morning, be so full hyper-focused, and then I would like be working until like 1:30 in the morning. Then I'd go to bed. I would hardly drink anything or hardly eat anything. I had a massive breakdown. I was living on my own in this pimping apartment in Brisbane overlooking the city. I was busting my ass and I had a massive breakdown. I had to get out of the apartment. Because what I had to do, especially giving up drugs and alcohol, when you do that, you've got to change your environment.
Yeah, everything.
Everything.
People,
Yep,
geology,
yep.
geography.
Yeah, totally. And then what you find is that you don't have anyone, because the people who you would talk to when you were feeling down, they're no longer there because they were involved with drugs and all that. And once you've sort of broken away from that, people don't call you and say, hey, how's it going, man?
Yeah.
Because
just checking up on you.
No one did that because I was no longer involved with that life. So I had nothing. So I was in my mind the whole time and just had a massive breakdown because I was like, focus, boom.
Yep.
So I've learned, and I've had it happen twice now from just working way too hard. So I definitely try to break it up now. And the cool thing is as well, I really thrive off being around people. So stuff like this is great. Because I'm meeting a new person, doing something really cool, in Melbourne, hanging with people. That's like my dopamine hit type of thing, you know? So no, it's interesting how it works.
Yeah, and it's good that you've been able to dial that in. I think that's probably one of the things that resonates with me the most is being an ADHD person. I'm only 1 year into the diagnosis, but it's the challenge in trying to realign your life for the best fit and hoping that the people around you understand, because that's also something that I've had to do. I've got some very close friends in a sporting group, in a jiu-jitsu group, and I don't necessarily see them as much as I used to, and I'm not training as much as I used to. And I know that they're always like, "Where's Mike? What's going on? You come back to training? Hey, dude, what?" Like, they're the people that actually really care. And so then you're trying to manage this thing of like, it's not you, it's me. I still love you. I'm still like, part of the crew. I just have to have some distance to recalibrate. So that's, I think, one of those things that can sometimes be tricky because we feel like we're selfish. We feel like we're just, we're doing this all for ourselves. But it's essential in trying to find out who that next you is, right? Particularly when you're giving up the old you. That's one of those things that I think I'm probably not 20% through yet. I think I've still got a massive journey to go through there. But, to our point before, one of the things that's really given me some passion for that is my work. Because now my work is about tech, which I love, but now in a leadership position, I also get to make it about neurodiversity. And I get to be one of those people that tries to build a workplace that's accommodating for folks like that. We've got a few people here that are spectrumized. And to various degrees. Some people have very, very hard days and some people walk through them. But we all sort of, chat and bounce off each other. How are you going today? Where are you at? You're at like, I'm 70% today. I'm at about a 40. So we try and keep that dialogue to make sure everyone just knows that it's okay to be neurodivergent.
Yeah, being yourself is probably the best medicine, I think, But yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. It's definitely interesting.
What's the rest of the trip got for you? So for folks that, again, this is going to be out a bit late. So what we're going to say is if you saw the EduTech show, then it was a great show, I'm sure. But I want to put some links and things in the comments for folks to get in touch with you. How do people reach out? What are the best ways to connect?
There you go. So we've got our podcast, Neurodivergent Mates. You can get that we're available on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, all the social media
We'll put
platforms.
some links and stuff up for that as well. Yeah.
You could definitely check us out at Neurodiversity Academy, so neurodiversityacademy.com. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. We've got there's a lot of places you could probably check us out. I think that's roughly about it.
Yep.
Yeah,
cool.
I think
we'll
so.
Send everyone your way. If you want to get in touch with Will, get in touch with Will. If you're popping down to EduTech, then you'll see Will. And next time you're back in Melbourne, give us a hoy and come and do chapter 2.
Yeah, totally. And probably, I know you're up in Sydney next week, right?
Week after next.
Oh, week after.
Week after next.
Yeah, let me know what's going on. And We might be able to just hang out
Yeah, man.
if you like.
I'll be in
man.
Darling Harbour. We're in Darling Harbour for the
Darling Harbour.
the
Okay.
Integrate Expo. So our big trade show, the EduTech show, is the education technology show that's in Melbourne this weekend. And then 2 weeks from now is the Integrate trade show, which is the big AV trade show, education, government, corporate, the works. So we'll be up there for that.
Yeah, man. Let me know and I'll roll in. What days is it?
20. Oh, Siren's going to
Is it during the week?
kick my butt. It is. It's the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I think it's 24, 5, and 6.
Oh, cool. I might roll down after work or something.
Yeah.
If it's a cool.
Yeah,
we'll
come down. We're down there for
something.
3 nights. So yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Come and
Sweet
say good
as. Yeah, I love that.
Awesome. Will, it's been great to meet you. Thanks for your time.
Likewise.
Enjoy the rest of your stay.
Nah, thanks heaps for having me, man. And let me know if I can ever help in if anything.
Will do.
Thanks heaps, brother.
Thanks, buddy. Ta.
Bye, mate.